Hello, I am Michael Santos with PrisonProfessors.com, and I'm presenting the second video in a series that I started yesterday called The White Collar Offender and the Shot Caller. Why would I present a series of videos like this? Well, it all stems from the letter that I received from George, an individual who is currently in a maximum security prison. He is in his 35th year of consecutive confinement, and the reality is that George could have been released probably after 3 to 5 years. Why? Well, George was convicted when he was a young man, still a teenager. He went inside of a federal prison. He encountered the types of challenges that many people in federal prison face. But it was his response to those challenges that resulted in George receiving disciplinary infractions. Those disciplinary infractions resulted in him going to higher security level prisons. Those higher security level prisons resulted in George having to make new decisions, and George unfortunately didn't have the preparation or the mindset to figure out how to respond in such a way that would lead to his success through prison. Instead, he picked up a knife, he used weapons, he attacked people, and as a consequence of that, he was not only receiving disciplinary problems in prison that resulted in the loss of his good time, but he also faced new criminal charges. And those criminal charges resulted in George going from federal correctional institutions to United States penitentiaries, high security United States penitentiaries that include USP Terre Haute, USP Lompoc, USP Leavenworth, USP Marion, and the granddaddy of them all, the ADX Federal Penitentiary, which is the nation's most secure federal prison. And George wrote me a letter after he went through a course that I created, and wrote and said that he'd wished that he had seen this course or gone through this course at the start of his journey rather than after he had already had 35 years of prison behind him. You see, the reality is anybody who is going into the federal prison system should be thinking about how every decision that individual makes is going to have consequences. And I spoke about a client of mine who is a professional, he's an engineer, but somehow found himself wrapped up in the criminal system with a mail fraud charge. And in yesterday's video, I described what a mail fraud charge is. A lot of people don't understand what a mail fraud charge is. Basically, it just means using the mail in the furtherance of a criminal conspiracy. Could be sending an invoice, could be sending marketing materials, could be anything of that sort. If prosecutors deem that you have used the mail to violate a law, it's very easy for them to bring charges, and a jury can convict, and before you know it, the individual who just fancies himself a businessman or a professional or a law-abiding citizen sees that he becomes immersed in the criminal justice system. And when he's immersed in the criminal justice system, regardless of whether he's going to a minimum security camp, a federal correctional institution, or even a detention center where he is held momentarily, that individual is going to encounter the shot caller. Some of you may have seen the movie recently that's on Netflix, or I don't know if it's HBO, but I definitely saw it on Direct TV, called Shot Caller. And it's actually a similar story of a white-collar guy who finds himself immersed in the criminal justice system. And he has to respond to certain pressures that he feels in the criminal justice system. The responses that he gives completely changes the persona of this white-collar professional. Well, it's no different for my client, who was an engineer, who got wrapped up on a mail fraud charge and finds himself inside the Federal Detention Center or the Metropolitan Detention Center in Los Angeles. And while he's in the detention center, initially after his arrest, he really anticipated that he would be released on a bond. But because of his nationality or his immigration status, he was held in the detention center for about 10 days, 12 days. If you're going to live in a detention center for 10 or 12 days, without a doubt, you are going to encounter a shot caller. And the shot caller is basically going to be searching for information. He's going to be prospecting, find out what kind of individual this person is, because he's new to the prison environment. And nobody knows who he is. So they want to find out. That's what prison is like. People are always searching, not only minding their own business, but trying to get into the business of everybody else. And the way that an individual responds to those pressures can have a material influence on the journey through prison. So it's really important to learn. I gave an example of what happened to, I just call him the engineer, when he was when he was locked inside the detention center in Los Angeles. You see, first of all, the shot caller came and started asking him questions, peppering him with information, just trying to find out who he is. And by the engineer not knowing really how to respond to such questions, it pressured or pushed the shot caller to take it a step further and to begin to test. How is the professional going to respond to pressures? And so the engineer tells me the next step. Day or a couple of days later, he's out at recreation. He comes back to his cell and he sees the shot caller lying on his bunk. That's pretty traumatic. You walk into your cell, you think it's your cell, and you think it's your bed, but there's a guy lying in there. How do you respond to that challenge? We know how George would have responded, the person who wrote me the letter, who's currently in maximum security prison, serving additional sentences. We know how he responded. He picked up a knife and he stabbed people. He used violence. And as a consequence of that violence, he ended up getting new sentences and he ended up serving, well, the rest of his life in prison. So, how does the engineer respond? The reality is that an engineer uses his resources. And what is your strongest resource when you are in prison? What is your biggest asset? It's your intellect. It's your mind. It's your ability to understand that a fight or violence is not the way to respond to a problem. You see, you can't fight one person. In prison, there are cliques or tribes, so to speak, and everybody's pressuring everybody else. So you're never going to resolve a problem with violence unless you want to live in that world. You've got to be to use a cliche that I frequently hear out here, you've got to be able to think outside of the box. You've got to develop all of your critical thinking skills. And I'll tell you that as an engineer, my friend had very good critical thinking skills. So what does he do? He walks into the cell. He sees the man lying on his bunk. He knows that it is a test. It is a prison test. And how you respond to that test is going to influence many things that follow. So what does my friend do? My client do? He sits down in the cell. He doesn't say anything. He just looks. He stares at the shot caller. He just looks. The shot caller stares back. Clearly, it's a tense moment. It is a moment of truth. Who is going to break? Who is going to say something? What is going to happen? The shot caller stares. The engineer stares. And finally, the engineer speaks. He says, I think that, when you checked into this hotel, they gave you a cell and they gave me a cell. I've seen your cell. It's much better than my cell. Maybe you want to switch cells. That's okay. No confrontation, no threat. I don't mind switching cells with yours. I'd be happy to switch your cells with yours. But this is my cell. And I would appreciate it. Maybe you got confused, maybe there's a mistake. I'd appreciate it if you didn't sit on my rack. There was no confrontation. There was no violence. It could have gone either way. But the shot caller saw that he didn't look away. He was strong and firm in his resolve. And he kept looking at him. And the shot caller said, all right. And he walked out. Another test. But what happens, what follows? The engineer, he knows that he is in an environment that he doesn't quite get or understand. Stephen Covey says, first seek to understand before you try to be understood. So, what happens next? The engineer uses his intellect. He says, I've got to understand this environment. It's a math skill. He's got math skills. He goes to join the team of playing poker. And he purposely loses many hands. Many hands during the day, because at night is when the players play poker. And so he loses hands during the daytime, and of course the word circulates. Huh, this guy's a sucker. In the evening, he plays poker again. But this time he cleans up. Wins $3,000 in his first night. People are angry. Feel that he swindled them. What does he do next? He tells everybody, hey, we're all brothers in here. It's all good. I don't want to take your money. I don't want anybody to be without money. So he gives all the money back to everybody he won from. And the shot caller comes to him and he says, this guy's okay. Anybody has a problem with him, you also got a problem with me. Not all situations work that way in prison. But it made things easier for the rest of the time that the engineer was there. He didn't shake, he didn't quiver when he was pressured. Then he used his mind to figure out, how do I exist in this environment? There are many ways to exist in a prison, in a high security environment. To the extent that you learn the environment before you go in, you can prepare yourself for these challenges that are inevitable. Even if you go to a minimum security camp, you will be serving time alongside people who have been in prison for decades. And those people fancy the prison is their domain. That person is not going to have your intellect. He is not going to have your advanced degrees. He is not going to have your level of accomplishment. But he may run that yard. And it's important that you understand, how am I going to live in this yard in such a way that I can go home early at the earliest possible time, or even just not go home later. That's the objective. Get through the term in the most successful way possible, never forgetting how you define success. So I'd love to share some more of these videos with you that will describe, how did I define success? How did I get through 26 calendar years, starting out not only in detention centers, but in high security penitentiaries where I served the first 7 or 8 years of my term. Then in medium security prisons, then in low security prisons, then in minimum security prisons for 26 calendar years. Was it because I was the toughest, baddest guy in there? Absolutely not. I wasn't. And I didn't have a gang or a clique around me. But what I did have was a focus. And that's what I want to share with you. So stick with the free videos. Subscribe to us just by hitting the button. If you're on YouTube, just hit it up there. It's the big red button, subscribe, and you'll get these videos free. If you're looking at this on our website at prisonprofessors.com, just click the button down there and subscribe, and the videos will come to your inbox, and you can learn, listen and learn. You can also look at our blogs. They're free. We strive to give away more free content than we sell, because my partner, Sean Hopwood, and I know and understand that not everybody has the resources to hire us, and that's okay. We know that you understand that for somebody who served 26 calendar years in prison, I value my time, and I don't have time to work one-on-one with everybody that reaches out to me. That's why I present these videos, these audios, these podcasts, writing these articles, because every day I try to make a commitment to share what I learned from masterminds. Those masterminds empowered me through 26 years in prison. They allowed me to come back successfully, and they're going to help you get the lowest possible sentence, serve it in the best possible environment, and come home at the soonest possible time. If that interests you, become a fan of prisonprofessors.com. Again, subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on social media like Facebook, and connect. I'm Michael at prisonprofessors.com. Very happy to be helping you. Thank you.